Hi guys, welcome back. So now we are going to talk about change control process and how it should be managed in a project. But before that, we need to understand what a change control is. So basically, here the change means that any change which you do to any project deliverables, it could be document, it could be requirement, code, anything basically which is part of the project deliverables. Now, technically, this is performed throughout the project where you review and approve the changes, but for practical purpose, change control process kicks in once the document is signed off and baseline. Let's say a project has started. Now, you will continue or rather start reviewing the changes and approving them. But after initial round of requirement gathering, whether let's say if it's a waterfall, then there will be a dedicated phase for requirement gathering. For agile, there will be sprints where you will be, updating the product backlog. So whether you are doing agile or waterfall, you will reach a point when the requirements are frozen. They are signed off for that phase, for that sprint, and you are not expected to make any changes in that. Now, this is the baseline version. This is called baselining. When you sign off, and sign off is not a one step process. Again, you will have to walk through the entire document, all the requirements in it with all the stakeholders, the sponsors, they will approve it. And after getting that, you baseline it. Now, if any change is proposed in this document, let's say you get a new requirement. Now that will go through the change control process. Now most of the organization already have some kind of processes. Let's say if you receive a change control where the overall effort is less than 40 hours, which is less than a week, in that case a lot of companies process them, directly accept and approve them and start working on them. But let's say if it is going to take more than a week, then it will go through a different channel where it will go through funding and the release management, where its delivery will be planned separately. So all of that is change control process. But again, the 40 hours example which I took is just an example. It could be 10 hours, it could be 40 hours, it could be 400 hours. And so it largely depends upon the organization and the bandwidth of the team, the kind of work they do. But most of the companies today will have a change control board, CCB. Now, that board usually consists of project managers, sponsors, important stakeholders, and they review these changes, they approve these changes, and the process is performed throughout the project, as I said earlier. But it largely change control board is involved after the document, after the requirements are baselined. A change control or rather change request is in itself can be a project, a mini project. It may have multiple requirements. It could be small, it could be a big change, so big that you can't even, accommodate in the current release, and you may have to plan for the new release. So don't assume that these changes are usually small. These changes could be big, and anybody, any stakeholder can propose change. So if the question is that who can propose a change request or change control, remember that any stakeholder can ask you to make change. And change here, as I said earlier, refers to the change in the existing requirements, documents, code, or any other setup in the project. And yes, even if your stakeholder is asking you verbally, let's say you are walking the document or you are in some meeting where your stakeholder is verbally asking you to make the change, you are responsible for documenting that. So, if you are a project manager or even a business analyst, anybody else, if you receive a change through any medium, you have to document that. And every documented change request will be reviewed, approved. When I say approved, a decision will be taken on that. So change control board can also decide to defer the change request, because it could be any reason. They may not have enough money at that stage, and there may not be enough resources, other resources, and they may simply decline, saying that it is not worth it or it is not important. So all change requests are not approved. And once a change request is approved, it will go through its own cycle of cost estimation, activity sequence, milestones will be like scheduled dates for delivery will be finalized, and resource management and all of that project management will happen for that change request also. And these are the inputs, tools and techniques, and the outputs. So as far as input is concerned, we have project management plan where we have the change management plan, configuration management plan, scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline. So you can understand when I say that it is signed off and baselined, all of this will be part of input, because when we say that the document has been baselined, it implies that the scope is finalized. We know that this is the change we are going to do for this project, for this phase. Now, if I'm going to make any change to this requirement, this functionality, it will also impact the current scope and schedule, cost, all of that. Change management plan basically provides the direction for managing the change control process. So as I mentioned earlier, there could be rules of those 40 hours, those kind of rules. So you may have a process, and change management plan will simply guide that process. And configuration management plan basically guides what all updates will be made in the documents and the other processes if there is a change request. So this is required to make sure that we follow standard procedures in the event of a change request. And then we have the project documents. Again, the basis of estimates which we saw earlier for um, any change. We are going to estimate it. So initially when we estimate a project, we have certain set of requirements. We know the features we are expected to deliver. But if we receive a change after that, it is going to impact the basis of estimate. So this is going to be our input here. Of course, the requirement traceability matrix. Requirement traceability matrix is basically a quality feature which is done to trace a requirement from its origin to delivery. So if there's a new requirement, it is going to impact the requirement traceability. So let's say we are talking about a website. Now, initially, there was a requirement that this website should have a search feature. So, we created a search bar like you see in Google or YouTube. But this requirement never talked about having additional features where, let's say, if you type, when you start typing in that search bar, we should display options, the kind of options you usually see in YouTube or other websites. Let me quickly jump into the Google and show you how it appears. So I will go to google.com. Now here, if I type anything, it will give, it will start, to display certain options which are related to what I have entered in the search bar. CAR. Now you can see that it is displaying this variety of options here. Cartoon, carry on, Jatta, and these numerous options. A point is, this is an additional feature. Now this is something which may look small, but if you are in technology, it is done using a technology called Ajax. Now Ajax, it will require dedicated coding, dedicated effort, testing, design, development, everything. This is not a small change. Now initially when we estimated the project, this functionality based on Ajax was not estimated because this requirement was not there. Now we had a requirement for search, and we had a requirement traceability for that search requirement. Now we will update that requirement, we will update that traceability with this additional information to make sure that this is also tracked and maintained. And then, of course, any change in the project will have risk. So risk report will also be part of our input. So let's go back to our slide. And of course, we have the work performance report, change request, EEFs, environmental factors, and the organizational process assets. And for tools and techniques, we have again the usual suspects, except you can see that We have two new options here: the autocratic decision making, where one individual takes the responsibility for making the decision for the entire group. So it could be project manager, it could be a sponsor, it could be a technical lead. And then we have the multi criteria decision analysis. Basically, it's a decision matrix to provide a systematic analytical approach to evaluate the requested changes according to a set of predefined criteria. So, let's say I was talking about that Ajax change. So, in this case, we may have certain rules, based on the technology and the kind of technology and the infrastructure it will need, things like that. So, every organization, every project will have their own predefined rules, and they will use that for multi criteria decision analysis. Other than that, we have alternative analysis, which I have mentioned earlier, that it is used to assess the requested changes and decide which are accepted. So, as you can see, alternatives. So, we are looking at the alternatives. Sometimes the change may be good, really good, but there is a workaround which is cheaper. I mean, we don't have to make any changes for that. In that case, stakeholders may opt for that workaround, which is not so automatic, no, not so clean, but it's cheap, and we don't have to make any changes for that. So they may go ahead with that. In same line, we have the cost benefit analysis. So they are going to review the cost benefit of the change. Voting simply refers to the process of voting, and as an output of this process of perform integrated change control, we will have approved change request, project management plan updates, and document updates. And these are the applications. So all the changes or anything you do in change control process will impact all of these. So largely everything, you can see that we have direct and manage project work, change quality, control procurements, project management plan updates, project document updates, a variety of other stuff like, acquire resources, monitor communications, plan procurement management, monitor stakeholder engagement, validate scope, develop team, plan risk responses, conduct procurement, control scope, manage team, implement risk responses, control procurement, control schedule, control resources, monitor risk, identify stakeholder, control cost, manage quality, control quality, manage stakeholder engagement. So basically variety of things. So because as I said earlier, a change in itself can be a project. So, and when we talk about project, we are dealing with all of these. We have to manage the stakeholders, we have to manage the quality, we have to manage the cost, scope, quality, all of it. So that's why this integrated change control management will have applications on all of these things. So that's it for now. In the next video, we will continue with close project or phase activity. Thank you.